He drew a circle that shut me out. Heretic, rebel, a thing to flout. But love and I had the wit to win. We drew a circle that took him in. Please rise in body or spirit for this morning's opening hymn.
I feel no motion, standing on these mountains and plains, far away from the rolling ocean. Still my dry land heart can say, I've been sailing all my life now. Never harbor or port have I known. The wide universe is the ocean I travel, and the earth is my blue boat home. You all sound good. Sun my sail and moon my rudder, as I ply the starry sea, leaning over the edge in wonder, casting questions into the deep, drifting here with my ship's companions, all we kindred pilgrim souls, marking our way by the lights of the heavens in our beautiful blue boat home. All right, Lee. I give thanks to the ways upholding me, held the great winds urging me on, breathe the infinite sea before me, sing the sky my sailor song. I was born upon the fathoms, never harbor or port have I known. The wide universe is the ocean I travel, and the earth is my blue boat home.
So, well, let's see. Is this one good? Can y'all hear it or no? Yes? Online people, I have no idea if you can hear it, so we're getting a thumbs up. I don't know how, but we are. Welcome to the Unitarian Church. My name is Nathan. I'm one of your ministers. I'm so pleased to welcome you today. For middle hour, because it's going to get more confusing after this. Middle hour, we have two different things who are for people who are not children or youth. Children and youth have their same things they always have. But we have our climate justice sub-team, and that is in room 6 or 7. Ooh, that is in room 7. I love a responsive congregation. And we're continuing the exploration of our faith in room 6 with where do we come from is, I think, the theme of today. So let's go simple into complicated. Simplest. On Tuesday, there is a rainbow bus traveling the country that is distributing LGBT-friendly books to organizations that need support, and it is going to land here on Tuesday from 4 to 6? Okay. Just to clarify, that was a look for confirmation, not for a whoop, but I'm happy with both. This is open to all of you. We were mentioned in the LSU Reveille and the New York Times for this tour. So it's cool and it's a big deal, and we are lucky that Youth Oasis has reached out to us for this. So that is on Tuesday. The following Tuesday, the 19th, we are hosting Together Baton Rouge's Delegates Assembly. So they're expecting about 200 people, and we need volunteers. Well, we need you to show up, and we need volunteers. So there will be a table in the breezeway. Please go and sign up for that if you can volunteer in any way. So, and even if you can't, please show up to the Delegates Assembly. That's on the 19th. Now for this. Online people, I don't know what you can do about the Delegates Assembly. If you're local, sign up. Otherwise, don't. So this is the next thing that we're going to talk about, and it's simple and very confusing at the same time. This is a birdhouse. It is a fundraiser for the church. We have somewhere over there, I haven't seen it set up yet, we are going to not sell but ask for donations for these birdhouses to cover our cost. We'll raise a little bit of money by you buying these birdhouses, but here's where it gets a little more complicated. We need you to then decorate these birdhouses as fancy or elaborate or over the top, or we'll convince other people to buy them as you can, and then give them back to us. And then we are going to auction them off. If you got it? All right, our hymn leader has it, so all of you have got it also. So once again, and bear in mind, birds don't like birdhouses that are super pretty. So these are not for birds, they're for us to feel good about ourselves and raise money. They're good lawn ornaments. You could paint a bunch of birds on it and try and convince the birds, I don't know. But make a donation to pick these up, decorate them, bring them back. Good? Online people, email us, we'll send you a birdhouse and you can mail it to us or something. Or if you're local, you can come in. All right. Did I cover everything? That's a lot. I'm going to put the birdhouse back on the back.
When soldiers part ways at war's end, the breakup of the platoon triggers the same emotion as the death of a person. It is the final bloodless death of war. The same mood haunts actors on the drop of the final curtain. After months of working together, something greater than themselves has just died. After a store closes its doors on the final evening, or a Congress wraps its final sessions, the participants amble away, feeling that they were part of something larger than themselves, something they intuit had a life even though they can't quite put a finger on it. In this way, death is not only for humans, but for everything that existed. And it turns out that anything which enjoys life enjoys an afterlife. Platoons and plays and stores and congresses do not end. They simply move on to a different dimension. They are things that we created and existed for a time, and therefore, by the cosmic rules, they continue to exist in a different realm. Although it is difficult for us to imagine how these beings interact, they enjoy a delicious afterlife together, exchanging stories of their adventures. They laugh about good times and often, just like humans, lament the brevity of life. The people who constituted them are not included in their stories. In truth, they have as little understanding of you as you have of them. Then they generally have no idea you existed. It may seem mysterious to you that these organizations can live on without the people who compose them, but the underlying principle is simple. The afterlife is made of spirits. After all, you do not bring your kidney and liver and heart to the afterlife with you. Instead, you gain independence from the pieces that make you up. A consequence of this cosmic scheme may surprise you. When you die, you are grieved by all the atoms of which you were composed. They hung together for years, whether in sheets of skin or communities of spleen. With your death, they do not die. Instead, they part ways, moving off in separate directions, mourning the loss of a special time they shared together. haunted by the feeling that they were once playing parts in something larger than themselves, something that had a life of its own, something they can hardly put a finger on.
So those of you who've been attending know that that's a book by David Eagleman called Some 40 Tales of the Afterlife, where every chapter he tells another story of what he thinks could happen in the afterlife. I also want you to know behind me, so these are our flowers that are donated. All right. Can you go this up on this one a little? So these flowers are the ones that are donated that we have every Sunday. These are by Charlie Freiling. Back here are flowers from a memorial service we did yesterday. There were two people who were not affiliated with the church but called us and asked if we would do their service. It was for Flavio Manrique and his mother, Sonia Manrique. They died separately, but they decided to have the service together, and we were able to honor that for them. So I just want to name that there are flowers on the chancel for that. And with that, I'll invite us into a moment of prayer and reflection. The God that we know when we see love and kindness and hope and family, that mystery named and unnamed, whatever it is that holds us together, be with us on this day. And please hold all of those who are preparing for Ramadan tonight. Especially hold those in Jerusalem and other cities that would normally celebrate but are too afraid or it is too dangerous. Hold all of us who long for a world without genocide, without violence, without fear, without oppression, without governments acting as a tool of the status quo or of those with power. Help us to always remain with open hearts to this world, to not lose hope, to not fall into cynicism, but to know that our very existence is important for the world to be better. Help us to love the people that we know and to love even more the people we don't. Help us to grieve those that we've lost, and help us to build a world worthy of all. Amen.
The sharing of stones ritual here at the Unitarian Church of Baton Rouge is a time in our service where we take pause to come forth to share stones as we honor the joys and sorrows of our lives with this community and those gathered online. Visitors, as always, you are welcome to take part in this service. Online, please add your stones through the chat. This week and every week, when we're those who gather are invited to sign cards for members of the congregation at our congregational care team at our reception area out just to my left. Today, there are a few cards. We have news regarding a few church members and one of our staff members. First, we wanted to keep Wayne Parker in our thoughts and well wishes as he just learned his cancer has spread into his lymph nodes. He continues to appreciate the care he's receiving from many of us, and he says his humor is really keeping his spirits up, especially now. Nancy Seidner is recovering after a recent hospitalization. We'll be sending a card to her as well. Next, our church administrator, Allison Hall. We wanted to let her know that we are thinking of her as her daughter, Bailey Hall, just received news of a chronic diagnosis. May we continue to keep Allison and all the work she does for the church in our care and patience and tender appreciation. We have one very exciting announcement. Do y'all know we have a 90 and over birthday club here at the Unitarian Church of Baton Rouge? You do now, right? Can I get an amen for that? Today we wanted to honor that Katie Howard will be celebrating her 93rd Did y'all hear that? 93rd birthday. On March 19th, so we are preparing the card today. Let's just fill the card up and then maybe tack on another card or something. I don't want to advocate for that, but let's fill it up today and send it her way to let her know we are thinking of her. Those who would like to take part in this ritual, please come forth, lining up on the east or west walls of the sanctuary, and if it's easier for you to take the middle aisle, please do so. Our sharing of stones ritual begins. Let us say together our chalice lighting words. With hope to make this a better world, we light this flame. Its light is a symbol of the power of love.
From all that dwell below the skies, let songs of hope and faith arise. Let peace, goodwill on earth be sung, through every land, by every tongue.
You hear something like a long, long time ago, and the seed of an idea has been planted, and it grows like way beyond the original point in your brain? No one else has done? Okay. I was just making sure it wasn't just like a weird Nathan thing. So when I was at youth group way back in the 90s at the First Unitarian Universalist Church of New Orleans, my youth advisor was reading to us from the Tao of Pooh, which, having now read that sentence out loud, occurs to me you may not know what that means. Tao is a religion, and Pooh is reference to Winnie the Pooh. And anyway, so there's a book called The Tao of Pooh, and in that story, basically about how Winnie the Pooh is like the perfect Taoist. And in that story, the guy who wrote it, he said that scientists don't know as much as they claim. And he said that every time they use the word instinct, like why do birds fly south for the winter? Instinct. How do we learn to walk? What convinces plants to grow? Things like that. But if every time you use the word instinct, you replace it with the simple words, we don't know, it's a much more honest articulation of where we are with the world and with science. Because I know things tend to move and migrate in our brains, and I like the idea for today's service, so I went and I looked for the exact quote in the book, and it's not there. I mean, like, it is a little bit, but like the concept is kind of there as a sliding reference, but the rest just sort of evolved in my brain as a definitive statement. But I share the simple replacement of an explanation, sort of instinct in this case, with the recognition that sometimes we just don't know because it informs the topic of today's service. Today's service is about not death. So remember, and especially for those who are visitors or haven't been around in a while, the whole season of Lent we are talking about death. And so here's where we are now. We're almost through it, by the way. We're almost done. You're okay. The first few weeks, we really did like the bigger introductions to the concept of death. This week is not death, and then we have the afterlife, and then we're done. Then we'll do Palm Sunday and Tenebrae and Easter. So you got 2 more weeks. So this, and then at the end, I'll tie back in the Tao of Pooh that I was referencing. So let me explain a little about the not death theme. There are a lot of deaths that we experience, but very few of them are the actual end of life, where there's an internment, a scattering, or a burial. Life is filled with many and much more ambiguous deaths. So let me give you some examples. And this, when I was writing this, I didn't realize how deep a dive this may take into sadness. So this is the accidental beginning of the service sadness part. So this is a list of examples of not deaths that are deaths. Are you all with me so far? All right. So when someone has dementia, the death is a series of smaller deaths that accumulate over time. And it is hard to pinpoint exactly the time when the person has stopped being there with us. Miscarriages are a type of death that isn't death. Lost in all of the debate about reproductive rights, and especially by those who are trying to take away bodily autonomy, lost in that is the complete ambiguity of conception, pregnancy, and childbirth. We need to look no further than Alabama trying to figure out if IVF embryos are people or not, as an example of this. The entirety of pregnancy is filled with deaths that aren't deaths, and they aren't not deaths either. Does that make sense? Yeah. Estrangement is a type of death. It's the end of a relationship. It may be the end of a relationship forever, but we don't often describe that as death. There are also deaths that happen after a death. When you throw away their clothes. When you've forgotten someone's voice. If you decide to get remarried or to start building relationships after the death of someone that you were in a similar relationship with. I tend to think of all of the developmental stages children have gone through as a series of deaths. I've had to grieve the not death of having 2 babies, and then the not death of 2 toddlers. My kids are fine, but do you understand they're not babies anymore, so I had to grieve the death of that. And then grieve the death of them as toddlers, and now I have to grieve the death of them as people who I can spell things in front of, so they won't know what I'm saying. While I haven't gotten there yet, there's also the not death of childhood, the not death of a youth, and there's also the not death of when someone is empty nesting and their children are now adults. This next example, some of you may have seen, but zombies are a concept of not death. Someone has died but is not fully gone. The concept of zombies actually comes out of enslavement, and it's this idea of living but having the confines of life being taken from you due to systemic oppression and abuse. Louisiana's governor this week just signed into law new promises of not death for many people by getting rid of the possibilities of parole and further punishing juveniles as adults. The more I thought about this whole concept of grieving what is not death, I thought the problem that we are seeing in this state and this country is because we do not have good spiritual understandings of ambiguity. So today, let us think about all of the deaths that are not deaths. Let us start to work on what it means to live an ambiguous life, where we are comfortable with the things that are not well-defined and are abstract.
When we pause to remember who we are, companions on this grand experiment called life, when we take a moment to shed the ways we have been carefully taught, to lead from fear, to punish the poor, to persecute those who do not look like we do, to deny rights to those who love, to believe that we are separate, that some people are superior to others. When we take a moment to shed all of that and hear our stories, hear and see each other into existence, into community, when we take a moment to embrace, to practice a different way of being, when we answer the call of love, then we are living into the promise of building the world we dream about. It is beautiful to dream, to cast a vision, to stretch our minds into the future and imagine what may be if we were to build a new way of being, not someday, but beginning again today. Beginning again every day that we have breath, taking courage with these hands and hearts to make real the dream of a more equitable world, to journey together, seeking to be transformed even as we transform, becoming explorers and learners in this world around us, humbled by what we do not yet know, fulfilling the promise of healing a fragmented world, laboring not just in hope, but also in love. In this spirit we commit, in this spirit we gather, and in this spirit we pray.
So we just finished the Death Cafe, which is 4 sessions on the being a mortal being, death as a mortal process, death as a community process, the logistics of death, and then yesterday was death as a spiritual process. 38 people yesterday?
Just yesterday.
There's been up to 60 on one of them. So there is a pent-up need to talk about death. So I want to name, and the group that is bringing this up, that brought the Death Cafe, is the generosity team. Not to get money from you, but because the generosity team's goal is to help us to have spiritually healthy relationships with our money. And so one of the members of the worship guild, when we were talking about this offering that I'm about to bring up, said, if you don't make a will, the state of Louisiana has already decided a will for you. So a will is for anyone who doesn't want Louisiana to do with your money what they have decided. And I don't mean bad, like they have to decide, so it gets divided up among next of kin or your kids, or there's things, but the state has decided. So you writing your own will is a way for you to have a statement about where your money goes. And that also led to a discussion with the generosity team, because we would really like to have church members put the church in their will. And that led to a discussion where there is an assumption that only those with wealth are able to do that. And that's not true. I would like, for those of you who pledge to the church, who every year make a gift to this church to say, we want this church to keep going. If you took the same percentage of your income that is your pledge, and you also put that percentage into your will, just as an example. So if you give $100 a year, and that is 1% of your income, and you only have $1,000 in your bank, and you leave the 1%, I don't know what the math on that is, but the quantity of money is not the point. That if this church was able to have people who thought about their own death clear-eyed enough that they could decide where their money went more than the state of Louisiana could. I would like for you to think about how set up this church would be for generations. Most churches our size have about a $700,000 endowment. We have a $35,000 endowment. There is a lot we could do if this church were able to think about that. Not to take all of your assets and give them to the church. Not to even do any sort of change that hurts your family financially or anything like that. But if we as a church were intentional about how we built this. So the generosity team they even have little pins you can put on your name tag if you've done this. But I would love to be in a church, first of all, where every church member has a will, regardless of if the church is in the will or not. And I would love to be in a church where many of you decided to have the church, some amount of your your estate go to the church. That's not the offering ask, however. That's just a statement of what we are trying to do during Lent. The offering ask is that we are going to share half of everything we bring in with the community fridge at the Red Shoes. Once again, this is kind of the most complicated to describe and simplest thing we've ever shared with. There's a fridge outside of the Red Shoes, which is down on Government Street, and they put food in it. And if you have food to put in it, you can put it in there. And the idea is that anyone who needs food can walk up to that fridge, open the door, and just take whatever is in there. Us giving, usually we give about $1,000. I mean, we bring in about $2,000 a month, and we give 1,000 of it away because we split it down the middle. So think about what $1,000 could do for this kind of micro organization. So I'll ask you to give very generously as this morning's offering is gratefully given and received. So remember, all the fun stuff comes at Easter, because this part's going to get even less fun. This is the section to talk about why it's not a great time to talk about this discussion. When we first brainstormed all the topics we needed to cover to talk about death, it was very clear we needed to cover not death, because, so we look at the liturgical arc, we had the basic death concepts. Today we have we have not death, then we have afterlife, and that's it. Then we're going to go into Palm Sunday, which is, in my view, all about anger. I'm actually really excited about that. I'm going to start looking at all the times. So I got a book. It's a concordance, which just lists every word that's in the Bible. And you know Jesus called his disciples idiots and fools, like a lot. He did, right? Yeah. So I'm really excited to look up the word idiot in the concordance and find all the times Jesus said idiot. But that's in 2 weeks. So we're going to have Palm Sunday, which is more about anger, Tenebrae, where we retell the story of the death of Jesus, and then Easter, which is all about rebirth, and it's all about excitement. But here's why today is not great for this topic. And it's probably true we would not have been ready to cover this topic a couple of years ago, but here we are. We are heading into the 4-year anniversary of the shutdowns. I don't want to spend a lot of time discussing it, mostly because I'm exhausted thinking about it, but it needs to be mentioned here. Most of us know now that we made it, but we didn't know that then. That first weekend of the shutdowns, we had brought in a guest to lead us through an entire weekend that we called the Heart Revival Weekend. We didn't use her for that because everyone was shutting down. But we did meet outside on Friday night. And I still remember that event vividly. We sat in chairs in a circle, a little bit spread apart. I was a little skeptical that we actually needed to do that. And we asked people, we sang Jacob's Ladder, and we asked each person to check in about how they were feeling with this thing that called COVID that some didn't even know what it was. And one woman, who thankfully is still with us, she said in a way that still echoes in my ears, she said, "This thing is scary because I don't know when it's over if I will still be here." We collectively, all of us, may have experienced one of the biggest non-death experiences of our lives. And in that non-death, we experience the non-death of so many things that are different now. Every price gouging venture is a reminder of that non-death. Joyfully, the new Mississippi state flag, the new name of the team in Washington, D.C., the football team, those are non-deaths that came from the pandemic. The way that we engage with sickness, how we should act when someone around us is sneezing, all of the legislation that we are seeing locally and nationally, that is a way of coping with this non-death we've all been through. And as much as I want to move on, it's important to acknowledge that we've all been through this and it has been profound. You know, I just got back from a minister's retreat and we were talking about what we needed from each other in our next chapter. But one of the things they brought up that was most needed was the need to heal from the pandemics and the shutdowns and all of the terror that came from it. And this needs to be a church that helps us to face what the rest of the world tells us to ignore. So it's important that we face it. And I know that maybe we're ready to start facing it because when I listen to sports podcasts, sports podcasts, they're most designed to perpetuate the status quo. Like their whole design is not to talk about the deeper issues, is just to talk about the stories of the things that are happening. But when I listen to these podcasts right now, like in the last few months, so you all know that they call any sports season that happened in 2020 the COVID season. So like if it's the basketball tournaments just ended like now. And so they called that the COVID basketball season. When they tried to put together the football season in the fall, where some schools played 2 games, some played 12, the NFL put in fake noise to make it sound like people were actually in the stadiums. But they used to talk about it with fear. Now they're talking about it without fear or anger or angst that I've come so accustomed to hearing in the last few years. So maybe we are closer to facing it than I think. So much of religion in America in our culture is designed to transcend death, to treat it like it's just a blip, that if you believe the right thing, if you act the right way, that you will not experience that scary thing that is coming. But what that does is that robs us of the sacred work of understanding what mortality is. And this church has to be a church that lets us acknowledge death for all of its fear and its heartache, because if we can face it, then we can also know about the sacredness that comes from returning to that mystery. We might be able to engage with the living world in a more spiritually healthy way. Also, I wonder if maybe we're looking, so one of the things ministers say all the time is the thing isn't the thing. Have you heard me say that before? So if someone comes presenting to me that they're very upset about this tie, they're actually usually not upset about the tie. It's what the tie represents to them in some way. So maybe also when we think about death, we're thinking about it wrong. The gift of non-death is that we can look at other things. So this next reading is from a Unitarian Universalist minister. She works for the Maine Wildlife and Fisheries Department. She's a chaplain for them. She wrote a few books. One of the ones that I really liked was called Here If You Need Me. You've probably heard me quote from her from time to time. You know, one of the things that she says that I really resonate with is she says not to look for God in an accident, but to look for God in a response. So don't say in a some sort of horrific incident, where is God, but look for the people who respond to that. What you should know about this reading before I turn it over to the people who are going to read it, she's actually talking about miracles as she's reflecting on the murder of someone. It's not in this reading, but she's saying, why is it we say miracles are when a series of unlikely events happen that are good, but when a series of unlikely events happen that are bad, we don't describe it as a miracle? Like, that's what she's pondering in this reading.
A miracle cannot simply be an event that is unlikely, for that would include the unlikely evil as well as the unlikely good. It cannot simply be an event inexplicable by natural law, for that would restrict the use of the word to events that do not occur outside of stories. And even if we believe that Jesus smoothed the leper's skin, made the blind man see, raised Jairus' daughter from the dead, even if we believe that each of Jesus' miracles actually took place, mere veracity does not lend them, or the word miracle, meaning. Scripture tells us, after all that, eyewitnesses to Jesus' miracles did not always find them meaningful. The Sea of Galilee bears no footprints. The dead once raised are dead once more. The sighted blind no longer see. However unlikely or impossible Jesus' deeds were once, they are all undone by now. A miracle is not defined by an event. A miracle is defined by gratitude. A string of coincidences stretching far back in human history converged to place a young woman in a parking lot at the very moment when a murderer happens by. A similar string of coincidences place a premature infant in a high-tech teaching hospital where a gifted doctor works to save him. Anything could happen, but only one thing will. If it is what we desire, what we long for so badly we feel it burning in our bones, if by chance this is given, we will fall on our grateful knees, praise God, and call it a miracle. And we will not be wrong. All 10 lepers were made clean. All 10 went on to live whatever new life was afforded them thereby. We can be confident that all 10 suffered other wounds, for life is wounding, and then all 10 died, for life is also terminal. All 10 have long since gone to dust and story. Sometimes the miracle is a life restored, but the restoration is always temporary. At other times, maybe most of the time, a miracle can only be the resurrection of love beside the unchanged fact of death. Now please remain seated as we sing our next hymn, Ubi Caritas.
Whichever interpretation best fits your science, theology, or fancy, my 2 points of confidence regarding death remain. First, there is no hell. In none of the life after death experiences do people return with panicked tales of devils waving pitchforks at them. And second, death is peaceful. So peaceful that those who wake up from it don't want to return to their bodies to fight for another day. The peace of extinction is different from the peace of fulfillment, of course. Yet whether to fulfillment or extinction, when God carries us home, it will be to a place of eternal rest. No promise is more comforting and none for me more certain. Put in theological terms, we come from God and return to God, even if only as post-animate as before we were pre-animate, part of the body of creation. Having passed through the valley of the shadow of death, we will dwell in the Lord forever.
Let's rise for the next Nest hymn.
We would be one as now we join in singing our hymn of love to pledge ourselves anew. Till that high cause of greater understanding of who we are and what in us is true. We would be one in living for each other to show to all a new community. We would be one in building for tomorrow, another world than we have known today. We would be one in searching for that meaning which binds our hearts and points us on our way. As one we pledge ourselves to greater service with love and justice strive to make us free.
All right, so let me give you a behind the scenes and an apology. Often if there's a reading I really like, but I don't have it electronically, I'll do a voice to text where I read the reading and then, it shows up in the text. And I did that, and I gave it to Melanie. And despite what Google Translate says, Jairus did not get resurrected. And thank you for trusting me with the reading to not adapt it in real time, because it could have been some other weird... Anyway, that was in fact Lazarus in the other reading, and we can blame my accent or Google Translate or my inability to proofread, one of the three. And that last reading was from Reverend Forrest Church. He was a Unitarian Universalist minister in New York. I don't know that I would recommend Googling him because he was into a lot of inappropriate behavior with congregants and drinking, but he did write a really good book on death. So the book is called Love and Death, and it's one of the most helpful books I've read on death, and that reading comes from that book. When I was in high school, my closest friend had to move to Houston. We had about a 2-month notice. And I found myself, I was like 15 or 16 at the time. No, I was 15, because he could drive and I couldn't. So anyway, I found myself getting really mad at him. All the stuff he did annoyed me to like no end, and I had no motivation to stay friends with him. I stuck it out because I I don't know, obligation or something, but all those little things just bothered me so much. I didn't realize it at the time because no one had told me about this non-death grief. But that's what was going on, was me trying to disconnect from him and to grieve his leaving. I also had this weird period where he had gotten a puppy, and I was very angry with the puppy, because how come that dog, who didn't care about him as much as I did, got to stay friends with him later, and I didn't? I see us living in a world more and more with this comfort around ambiguity and this type of liminal space. Ask many people who get a cancer diagnosis about how some people just can't handle that and they disappear. I see us more and more avoiding that awkward 2 months of friendship where I know deep in my heart I needed to savor every moment of it before it left, but all that reminder did was make me more resentful at the need to savor it. I still feel like that when people tell me I should savor every moment with my children, because making it through the day-to-day takes so much effort. I've heard from a number of people who are mourning someone who is in hospice that they would love to be able to savor every moment, but they're so busy just trying to make sure the person's going to be okay. These new laws that the legislature passed, that I alluded to earlier with harsher penalties, they come because we have not done a good job as a society of dealing with the things that are ambiguous. We like people to be good people or bad people. And if they are good people and bad people, then the bad people deserve to be locked up and to be punished. And I just made myself read through the entire article today on what happens when someone is given, what is the new awful way that our legislatures decided they can kill people with the nitrous. I don't want to read it because it is painful and I don't think it's good to be in my brain. And our legislator, the people we elected to represent us, have decided that that is part of government policy. If there is that simple binary, then there are the good people and the bad people deserve whatever it is we do to them. But the reality is all of us are good people and all of us do bad things and all of us have the potential to do great harm and all of us have the potential to do great good. And all of us deserve to be known for something other than just who we are at our best or at our worst. We're seeing so much fighting against trans people because in a world that has gotten more rigid about gender identities, with gender reveal parties and pink aisles and blue aisles for boys and girls in an attempt to sell more toys, it would make sense a culture that has not worked on its muscle at dealing with non-death, dealing with the things that we can't just fit or stick into a box, that we would start trying to legislate out things that make us uncomfortable because we haven't figured them out. Do you know that there have been people who are not entirely male or entirely female for as long as there have been people? And I'm not just talking in identity, I mean physiologically, in their bodies. This has been true for as long as time has existed. But right now we are stuck in a time where we are not good with ambiguity, and so we are going to legislate people into fear and legislate them into shame. Forrest Church, from that last reading, he said that all of life is us practicing for our own death. And maybe these small deaths are a way for us to get more comfortable with ambiguity and that weird space in between. And we have now reached the part of the service where I knew how I was going to close the service, and it didn't work, so I scrapped it entirely. I will tell you it involved a bird yelling at me during an entire scattering, and it also involved an entire series of bees out here, but I could not tie it together enough, so I scrapped it. Instead, I went back to the Tao of Pooh book from earlier. I think it's good for us to say when we don't know things. I don't not believe in an afterlife, but I don't know what I believe because I haven't experienced it yet. I know what I want it to be, and also it is okay to want a belief to be real. Everyone deserves that. And so then maybe there's a clarity of this faith can be for us to acknowledge beliefs that come because we've experienced and beliefs that we've come to because we need them to be true. And let's let both of those beliefs be valid. So let us acknowledge together this Lent just how hard living can be, about how much grief all of us are carrying around with us all of the time. And that maybe we will be missed in ways we could never imagine because it's outside of our actual ability to comprehend. That's a throwback to that reading about how our spleen is going to grieve us when we're gone. Maybe all of our atoms will grieve us. And maybe the question of death or not death is the wrong question altogether. Maybe the miracle is love despite the promise of death. Maybe the miracle is that we keep making a life worthwhile and loving the hell out of this world. So I would like for us to sing this closing hymn, we discovered it when we were doing the flower ceremony last year, and it's so beautiful. It's by Norbert Chopik. He's a Unitarian minister who was serving in the Czechoslovakia back in the 1940s. They discovered this in 2017. I invite you to rise in body or spirit as we sing.
My life is made worthwhile by fighting bravely on for those ideals I hold most great and holy. Though evil winds may blow, they will not rock the calm in my soul, which remains both quiet and lowly. I might be disappointed, I might fall in the fight, but I am sure that my life was worth living. The life which is to come has been my holy shrine. I trust that I have lived a life worth giving. For heaven waits for those whose spirits have won through. But I am sure that my life was worth living. And they will find the sun, whose minds have let them rise, and stand against the darkness and the mayhem. I might be disappointed, I might fall in the fight, but I am sure that my life was worth living. The life which is to come has been my holy shrine. I trust that I have lived a life worth giving.
As you go out this week, know that the world is better because you're here, and that we can go love the hell out of a lot of people. Go in peace. Go in love. Amen.